And welcome to 12.3's Virtual User Groups. I know we've been on a couple-week hiatus as I've been out of the country in Iceland. It was a wonderful trip for those of you that asked. Thank you very much. Today we're going to get right started here with using groups within ACT. So groups within ACT are a well-used feature by many people for static groups, but not so many people know how to build effective dynamic groups. And that's what we will be covering today. I'm currently broadcasting out of the AST 2016 demo database. This is a demo database that comes pre-installed with every copy of ACT, and I will show you how to build some groups within it. If you look along your left-hand navigation panel within ACT, you'll see things like the contacts view, you're probably very well familiar with, other things like your company, task list, history list, companies, but also groups. Now groups, for lack of a better word, they really are just groups of contacts. If I click on any group, I will see all of the contacts who are members of this group. And there's a few useful things that you can do this way. If I'm looking at a group and I look at the notes, it shows me a consolidated, aggregated listing of all notes for all contacts that are members of this group. And same thing with history. This can be useful if you make a group of maybe your high priority contacts, or perhaps certain salespeople would like to make groups for their own territories. And it can be helpful to look at histories just for the members of this group. You can also see consolidated activities that are scheduled with all members of the group. And also they're just useful for keeping certain things separate. For example, in my database, I have a virtual users group, and it's all of the customers of ours who have ever signed up for these online webinars. You can use groups for all sorts of things within ACT. I'll cover some examples today that I commonly see, and maybe you can get the wheels turning on ways that you can use this in your own database. So to make a new group, if you first go into your ACT and load up the groups panel, you'll see a few default ones that come in with it. And we can make a new one by going up to this button right up here with the silhouettes of some people on it with the plus sign and say new group. You won't see it appear in the left hand yet until we save the changes, but every group needs a name. This group name is the only required field that we have to fill out, and I'm going to just call this one static group example. It's also very helpful to fill out the description field. This one's optional, but it's going to help everybody else at your company whenever they're looking at this group to wonder what is this and who made this and why. Just filling out the description is useful for that in the future. So we will say this is a demo group used for ACT webinar June 21st, 2016. I'm going to press my floppy disk save icon, a relic of the past there. But when I save the group up, it now appears alphabetically in my sidebar panel on the left. And then on the right side, I can see everybody who's in this group. It's currently empty. Static groups I don't want to spend too much time on. They have their uses, but they're not very useful for a few reasons. But I want to get contacts added and removed into here. So I'm going to click on the Contacts tab and select Add/Remove Contacts. The Add/Remove Contacts panel appears, and there's two halves to this panel, an upper and a lower half. And the top part is static members, and it has a description, manually add or remove group members. Currently there's nobody in it, but if I press Contacts, I get a list of everybody in my database, sorted alphabetically by last name here. I can also sort by company or sort by email. And you can also use the search box here to search based on last name. But if I want Joe Bag of Donuts here in my group, I can use this single arrow to select him and move him over to the right panel. This side is everybody in the database. This side is everybody who's been added to the group. And I could go through, and this is helpful if maybe you know a handful of jeepers. I wouldn't really want to add more than about 20 people this way because it's pretty cumbersome to do it. But you can go through and manually add, pick and choose the people that you want to add to your group. The single arrow will move one contact at a time, left or right. The double arrow will add or remove all at once. If you want to clear this out and start over. Once I have the people in the group that I'd like to have this group contain, I'll press OK. Their names start to fill out this top panel here. And if I press OK, ta-da, we have a static group. All of the names of the contacts in the group are hyperlinks within ACT. If I click on Christy's name, it takes me back to her contact record. Under Christy's Groups/Companies tab, ACT will show me all of the groups that Christy is a member of, and she is a member of static group example. And that's about it. I have a static group now created for these people. Again, I have consolidated notes and histories for everybody in the group. This is sometimes helpful if we will add multiple people who might be related with a company and want to add in a few outsiders. You know, in our line of work, sometimes we have information about different server settings or ACT settings that we need to look up for a customer, and I can't remember exactly which customer the note might have been recorded under. So if I add all these contacts to a group, then I can just look at the notes in bulk and find things very quickly that way. Today's focus is going to really be on dynamic groups, which are way more powerful and a much more common use example. So in a static group, again, we're manually selecting, picking, and choosing every contact. I'm going to create a dynamic group here. So again, I'm going to go to New Group. Every group needs a name. I will name this one Dynamic Group Example. I will give it a description. Example for webinar, June 21st, 2016, and save it. You might be familiar with lookups in ACT. If I go to my contacts and view all contacts, in this demo database I have 210 names that ACT has added for me. And you can do a lookup on anything in ACT, on any field, in some pretty advanced ways. For example, if I want to say state contains CA, California, the lookup will return me everybody in the database whose state contains the letters CA. I got mostly California people in here. Looks like a few people from Lancashire, probably UK contacts here, also slipped into my lookup because ACT, interpreting this very literally, found that their state field contains CA. Lookups are useful in this way, but if I were to leave or do another lookup, view all contacts, now that lookup I did of state California is gone. Dynamic groups are a great way to save these forever and keep complicated lookups that maybe you've made or have to do all the time and keep them in a saved format for you. A dynamic group works much the same like a lookup. If I go to my dynamic group example and say add or remove contacts, instead of doing the static members this time, I'm going to say dynamic members. Members are dynamically added or removed based on the group's membership criteria. It shows me all of the criteria for this group where it currently just says there's currently no criteria for this group. So I will say edit. And this is where it starts getting a little tricky, but if you bear with it, you'll find it makes a lot of sense. The group criteria builder window comes up here, and it gives you 4 drop-down boxes that help you build the different requirements for group membership. We're going to be looking up contact records, so we'll leave this one as contact. You'll pretty much always leave this as contact in most cases. We'll say contact and then field name. Do the same one I just did. I'll say state. An operator, this contains search terms like contains, equal to, greater than, does not contain, starts with. And you got to remember that ACT, being a relational database, will interpret your filters very literally. So contains is different than equal to in a literal sense. If I did state contains CA and add this criteria to the list, I can press the preview button to see everybody that I would get in this group. In this small panel here, it'll show me, before I save this up, you're going to have 29 members of this group, and this is everyone who's in here. If I press OK and OK, I have that same lookup that I just did again. But now maybe I don't want those people that were from Lancashire in there. So if I go back to add or remove contacts, I'm going to edit the criteria again. I'm going to edit this line. Let's change contains to equal to CA. Now I'm not going to get those other people whose state contains the letter CA in here. I'll be getting only folks from California. So before I had 29 members of the group, there's a group count down here in the lower left, and I'm down to 26. It's a very basic example, but you can keep adding a lot more criteria to your groups. I'll go to add or remove contacts. Under dynamic members, edit criteria. Maybe I only want to see folks who are from the state of California, and I only want people who have an email address. So I can add in the field name, email, and then for an operator, instead of saying contains or equal to a specific value, I can just say contains data. The value field goes gray because there's nothing I need to specify here. I'm just looking for the email contains data, not blank. I'll add this to the list. And now we can see both of our criteria here. I want state equal to CA and email contains data. You read these line by line in order, and we're going to start paying attention to this and or column over here in a minute. But now if I do this, my group just got narrowed again by two fewer contacts. So now I'm down to 24 contacts in California who have email addresses. You can add any amount of criteria that you'd like. Maybe I only want folks from California who have an email address and are a customer. Well, that certainly narrowed it down to only six contacts. I can keep going to add or remove. And now I'm going to do something a little trickier. So far, all of these three criteria I've specified as and. I'm looking for a contact who satisfies all three conditions at once. But you can also change these to or. And this is a tricky part, and this is where a lot of troubles with groups can come up, because you need to be very literal about how you're reading these lines. So maybe I want someone who's in California or New York. I want to cover both states, but I still want to make sure they have an email address and that they are a customer. If I add my criteria of state equals New York to the end and preview it, no records were found that matched the specified criteria. Well, why not? Before we had 6 members, and now we have 0. And that's because it's looking for contacts that can satisfy both being in New York and California at the same time. Not going to happen. What we need to do here is mind our ands and ors. So I'm going to take this line, state of New York, because it got appended to the end, highlight it and move it up so that it's right below California and New York, and I can change this to or. This seems like it would work. I'm not going to. I'll show you why. But this is going to say state is equal to California, or their state is equal to New York, and they have an email address, and they are an ID status of customer. If I preview this, I've now got 30 contacts who match the criteria. But wait, a few have slipped in here without an email address. And why did that happen? This is because of a kind of an order of operations. When ACT, or rather any database language, is parsing out this criteria that you've given it, it's kind of viewing this or as the divider between a left and a right side of an equation. if you can picture all of these lines being moved so that they're on one long line, all horizontal. It's looking for a contact who's in California or someone who satisfies all three. It's not really looking for a contact in California whose email and ID is a customer. It's looking for somebody who's either in California or has all these three things. And that's why somebody who's in California but without an email was able to slip in. So this is an important part of being careful when you build your groups. We have 2 additional columns, if you've been very eagle-eyed and noticed. And the heading on these columns is just a left parenthesis and a right paren. There's actually a drop-down box here where I can select to add a parenthesis. I can open a parenthesis before this line. Going on to the second line, and I will close it out right here. Now if we go back to remembering our order of operations, things inside the parentheses, of course, will happen first. So ACT is going to first evaluate the state is equal to California or New York, and they have an email address, and their ID status is customer. This certainly narrows it down. This is just customers within California or New York that have an email. If I want to verify that, looking at these columns along the top, I can go to my options menu here, customize columns. This options and customize columns panel is a common feature throughout ACT. You'll see it when you're looking at the contact lookup view or your contact detail list. You'll see it in many different areas throughout ACT. But if I go to customize columns, maybe I want to put ID status being shown in this listing of columns here. And I also want to include state. Maybe I don't need title in there, and I'll take that one out. So now I can confirm that my group did work appropriately. Everybody in here is a customer with an email from either New York or California. So that's a good example of a dynamic group. I know a lot of people like to make groups for all of their salesperson's territories. They might do state equal to, state 1 or 2 or 3 to fill out territories in that way. And then they can name the entire group, Joe Bag of Donuts' territory, and make multiple ones set up for all of their different users of ACT. I have a dynamic group within, again, in our database about folks who are signed up for this virtual users group. If you have a checkbox on your record, a custom field we made, a checkbox that says whether you signed up for these emails or not, you're automatically added to the group, and I can use these to send out email messages. It's worth noting that dynamic groups, they are automatically always up to date. If 2 weeks from now somebody adds a new contact to ACT who satisfies this criteria, a New York customer with an email address, they'll automatically appear in the group the next time you look at it. It's very useful in that way, unlike static groups which never change, regardless of whose info changes up. If one of these contacts deletes their email, somebody else gets one added, somebody moves state, somebody changes ID status, the group is going to change appropriately. Very useful in that regard. I'm going to open the floor to some questions at the moment just to see if, I hope all that was clear. Anybody want to add something to the chat box, or the floor is open? All right, well, I will take all of that as a sign that I hope I did a good job and that all of this was clear. I often get a few emails after this of people saying that if they've gone ahead and tried to make their own groups and something's not, it seems to be behaving improperly, and it's almost always a case of having poor parentheses and minding your ands and ors when you're defining these criteria. But it is useful to get yourself a complex lookup that you can make and save to have at any time this way. You can use these groups for sending out email messages if you wanted to do a mail merge through Outlook in order to send out a template to everybody. Or my preferred method, which we're going to cover in next week's session, ACT marketing. When you build an ACT marketing template, and I'm going to go over the template editor next week, but when you build it out and go to send it, it will ask who you want to send it to. And you can choose things like a current lookup or a current contact. But I find sending it to a group that you've predefined always works the best. And a dynamic group can be a great way to build a group of a few hundred or thousands contacts without having to do it all manually. Let's see here. Oh, good. We got a few good questions here in the chat box. Is there any importance to what data you put in the value field first? Good question. No, there really isn't. When you're looking at AND, there is no hierarchy. It just wants to satisfy all criteria. When you're looking at ORs, it only is going to look at the rows that are the top and above and below it, or within the parentheses. But there is no hierarchy here according to state. If I were to move email up to the top and ID status up there and put the state at the bottom, I'm going to end up with the exact same group. As long as these parentheses in your ANDs and ORs are built properly, then the order of the criteria is independent. Good question. Okay, well, it was a rather brief session this morning. I hope everybody was able to find it useful. This will be posted up on YouTube. Let's see, a few more questions coming in. Hi, Ernie. Yes, I have these sessions being recorded, and I will be posting this on YouTube right after the meeting here. We do have a YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and type in 12-3 marketing, you should be able to find some of our past videos up there, or find our channel that has a listing of all of our videos posted in. All right, everyone. That's it for the questions. I hope you all have a terrific day. I hope to see you next week for the e-marketing meeting. That's normally a very popular one of mine, and in the past it's filled up. So get here early, and good luck. Thanks. Goodbye.